What's up, everybody?
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Zócalo. Check that fancy little background that's behind us. New feature. We figured out how to do it.
Hey, Char, the sky is full of stars, and the sky full of stars. Hey.
It is a sky full of stars. Oh my gosh, this is going to be a great show.
Yeah.
I'm
Sure.
Char. That is Norm. We are your hosts, and we discuss all things related to Babylon 5. That's why we're the Zócalo. We are your one-stop shop, and we discuss all facets of the show. Today is kind of a lighthearted, I call it the relaxed fit
Mhm.
edition, where we took last week off because I had to go do a programming workshop, which took all day. And although it was a lot of fun, I did miss you all. And I missed you, Norm.
I missed you too. Can you believe it's been a week? That's fast.
It was a really fast-paced week.
Yeah.
I felt in a way like I lost a part of my weekend because so much of my time was taken up doing that workshop. And it threw me off kilter. So I'm glad that's behind. And now we're ahead here. And we have daylight savings to deal with now and whatever. But anyway.
Wonder if that's throwing other people off kilter. It's a good thing that this is recording. That's going to be posted later. Right?
Right? That way, those of you who need to catch up on sleep and what have you, it's okay. We are here no matter when you want to watch the Zócalo. But for those of you who are live, say hello. Let us know that you're here. And thank you for joining us. Oh, speaking of which, BC, Alamoraine. Yeah, it is kind of an Alamoraine day. I agree.
Hi, Terry Lynn. Terry Lynn's
Hello,
here.
and Earl.
And Earl.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Good to have our regulars here with us. So yeah, relaxed fit day, kind of informal. We're going to have a brevare with us. You've got coffee. I've got brevare. And I hope our listeners have a beverage of their choice. And we're going to do the objective top 5. We scoured the internet for top 5 rankings of what the audience at large thinks are the best episodes of Babylon 5. Compare that to our own list and yours, and maybe see if there's some patterns, some consensus, or not.
You know, the neat thing is that during, you may have noticed this, Char, and I have definitely noticed this, that since HBO Max has launched the quote-unquote remastered edition of Babylon 5, there's a lot of new Babylon 5 online chatter that's going on. And I think that that JMS on his Twitter feed, that's at Straczynski, he's responding to a lot too, because
oh gosh, yeah,
believe it or not, you're actually seeing people ask him questions about the show as if they are watching it or because they are watching it for the very first time. I'm like,
right.
Wow. And that's got to be energizing
cool?
to him, right? You know, it's got to be exciting.
It's got to be gratifying. I would certainly think so, yes. And it could not come at a better time when he's got 2 books coming out later this year. I think there's this whole awakening of, oh, Straczynski. Also, lots of comments I noticed him retweeting of, I didn't realize that you wrote such and such. This was a big part of my childhood. Just so many people now realize, oh, wow, Straczynski has written a lot of the things that I enjoy in life, Babylon 5 being one of them.
Well, comic book fans may or may not know this, but if they are learning a little bit more about his past work, they'll see a cameo appearance of his in the very first Thor movie, where he tries to lift Mjolnir from the crater. And
yes.
Of course, it would have to be Joe.
He had some self-deprecating comments about that too. Something about how I didn't know how you guys weren't blinded by that or something. You know how Joe is.
Yeah. But, you know, self-deprecating comments aside, one thing that he doesn't do hardly ever is promote his own material. And that's why Char and I are both really excited about his book that comes out in June, I believe. It's Together We Go.
Yeah, I think is it June or July? I'm confusing the dates of his writing book and then Together We Will Go. It's this summer.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way. But oh my gosh, I've had it on pre-order pretty much from the moment it was available to do so. I'm very excited about this book too. And you know that Joe is excited when he himself brags a little bit about his book. He says, this might be the best thing I have ever written, which if you know Joe, he doesn't like puff himself out like that. He's not, what am I trying to say? He doesn't brag.
Braggadocious. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So if he's saying that, that means this might blow our collective brains out.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his, as you know. I know you are. Everyone here is, and I think that with say the advent of Sense8, that gave people a lot of exposure to him on Netflix. Obviously, I hope everyone's
Totally.
had a chance to have watched The Changeling. That was the movie based on an actual real life event that happened in San Diego in the late, I think it was the late 1920s.
The 20s. Wasn't it Riverside though?
Oh, he
Where
found
the
it. I'm sorry.
bodies were found?
He found the story from a friend of his gave him a clipping of a story that was getting thrown away because they were cleaning out some San Diego clerk county office records room.
Right.
And he said
that's where San Diego's coming from.
Yeah, and that's when Joe was living in San Diego. So, we have
Before
some.
it got nuked.
we have some comments that are coming through here.
Totally. A lot of people, the sleep thing. Anybody knows anything, let us know what that's about, please.
And not in light, for sure.
Please, not yet.
Yeah.
We got a lot to do here.
Slice of Sci-Fi. Summer says, I love Rising Stars. That's it.
Summer?
That's the treat. Pfft, who doesn't, right?
Absolutely. Agree. Yes. Also, I like Earl's comment. We are not Time Lords, so we shouldn't be dabbling in notions of attempting to control time. Yeah. And you know what? It's all made up anyway, right? Timey-wimey. Ugh.
I guess DST is, I guess it kind of, it destroys the fabric of the temporal fabric, the way the TARDIS does if you jump too many times.
Right.
In the same space.
And I mean, you can only regenerate so many times.
Earl, I love Midnight Nation as well. That's one of my all-time favorite graphic novels. If you haven't read that yet, it is
so
phenomenal.
Good.
Phenomenal.
Get it. It's one of my favorites too. You got me my copy, Norm.
I needed you to read the Joe Straczynski comic book version of The Walkabout.
Yes, and very much it is. So if you like Franklin's story, this really just expounds on that idea.
I've always wanted him to do like a one-shot, maybe 10-episode Amazon Prime Netflix quality series about that particular story. I think it'd be phenomenal.
That would be cool. You know what I do need to get? Have you read The Resistance yet? His newest comic book series?
I'm still waiting to get the graphic. I want the graphic novel because I'm not an episode or an issue by issue comic book fan reader anymore. I like my comic books collectible, hardcover, signed if possible.
Yeah, I agree. I like that presentation. All just everything together in a nice hardback.
Because if ever we get the chance to go to a convention again, I'll stand in line to get that one signed. I did get one of his signed. It was Supreme and Max, and it's an adult oriented comic book, Justice League adult oriented style comic book. And there's a picture of me. I'm standing next to him. I'm just geeking so hard. I'm like, I'm standing next to Joe Straczynski. Oh my god! And Joe's like, "Yep."
That sounds perfect.
Yeah, it's just his face. He's like, "Yep."
Yeah. I wonder if he makes that face in all of his photos with fans.
Joe is like one of the best panel guests that you can get because he's so sharp. Again, he's not braggadocious. He doesn't kind of get chuffed about it all. One of his standard responses to anybody when they get behind the microphone and they say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm a big fan." Right after you say that, he's like, "You're kind of a medium-sized fan." And it just puts everyone back on their heels. You're like, well, what?
You got to be ready to compete with that sharp wit there.
Yeah, he's a real deal for sure.
He is. All right. I also want to give a shout out to those of you who have been dealing with the massive snowstorms. And Earl, I know you're not quite in the Rockies. You're east of that, but it sounds like you're getting pummeled as well with something or another. Boy, if you're in the way of this thing, it's ginormous. It's dumping a lot of precipitation on people. Please be safe out there if you can even get out of your house.
Yeah, I mean, be sure that you can get proper ventilation. That your heaters and stuff like that don't get backed up or overloaded. So that's a real thing. Also, be very, very, very careful because I saw some information on this. Make sure that you plug your heater or whatever heating unit that you're using into a properly rated surge protector so that it does not blow out either the surge
Oh.
protector or the unit, because space heaters, inside space heaters, they draw a lot of power.
They use a lot of electricity. That's a very good point. Thanks for pointing that out. I love your Janeway coffee mug, by the way.
It's the best I can do. It's
Those
kind of
are
pseudo
so hard to
Janeway.
get. Yeah. Well, what do you say we get to it, huh? We've got some lists to go through.
Yeah, and
Okay.
half the show is kind of like list, half the show is kind of like what you're doing in the comments right now. So you can just keep firing those comments away as we go through the list. But we got to do our toast first.
That's right.
Toasted yet?
Yes,
So-
I got my Brevade, my
coffee?
usual vodka. Val too.
Val too. Delicious.
Boy, yeah, that is yum, man.
Mhm.
Okay. So we went across the internet scouring for some sort of consensus on what are maybe objectively the top 5 Babylon 5 episodes. We've detected some patterns as we'll go through, but there's also some, some outliers. And I am very curious to know what our viewers think about these lists. Do they agree with them? Do they disagree? And of course, we want to get into your lists because I gave you homework. If you're in our Discord, I said, get your list ready, create your top 5. Let's discuss. So I'm hoping we can get into that too. Plus, Norm, you made your list and I made mine. Well, I made more than one, but we'll get there when we get to that. So how about if we start off with good old IMDb? Because that's a fairly reliable, in terms of this sort of a thing, it's all kind of like self-selected people voting, but in terms of number and exposure, you're going to get a nice wide net of ratings. So I went through and I found the highest rated episodes of Babylon 5. And our top 5 are Sever Dreams at the very top with a rating of 9.6, 827 votes. Zahadum, number 2, 654 votes. War Without End, part 2, with a 9.4 rating and 634 votes. Endgame, also with a 9.4, 538 votes. And then we have a 3-way tie for 5th. We have The Coming of Shadows, The Long Twilight Struggle, and Sleeping in Light, all hitting a 9.3.
Wow. Okay. Not a lot of surprises here for me. Not a lot of surprises. The 3-way tie is interesting, and I'm assuming that with 538 votes, but a 9.4 rating, that must have rated higher in like the 4s and 5s, as opposed to like the 1s, 2s, and 3s for the aggregate score.
Maybe. Yeah. I do find it interesting just how it can't be the same people voting in necessarily every single thing, just because the numbers do spread out somewhat. People are apparently looking up episodes and then, oh yeah, I really like this one. They're not going through and rating every single one necessarily.
Yeah. But I don't really see any surprises here. For the tiebreaker in the 3, I have a personal favorite, but that doesn't necessarily mean I think it is the best. Say if I had to like recommend 5 for an audience out there, I might have to go with The Long Twilight Struggle.
That's a good choice. Yeah.
I think, yeah.
These are all good, strong episodes, but I do somewhat agree with Earl's comment about how these are a lot of kind of pew-pew, action-y episodes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's not really a surprise, but also in these episodes' defense, these are the most memorable ones in terms of story as well as pew-pew. If you were watching Zahadum in real time, are you really going to... How much of a long summer was that? Because holy crap.
Right.
Yeah. And Sever Dreams is always highly rated as, at the very top. It's a good story. Yes, there is a lot of action, but it's such a apex in the story.
Summer's got a really good point. And I was thinking about this also with Coming of Shadows, because that's the Hugo Award winner.
I love this comment.
And I understand exactly where you're coming from. But I think that the Coming of Shadows, it hits everything perfectly, and having Emperor Turhan in there and the heart attack, things like that, that's all fantastic. And I wanted to know if, because it has the Hugo Award, does that automatically break the tie with all these because of an actual real award that the Hugo Award is the award of the peer group, of science fiction writers.
Well, you know what? That that seems like a very logical concession to make. So if you want to break the tie, I agree. Like, go for it.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to argue that much with a Hugo Award.
But it's also kind of like saying that like the best picture is Oscar makes it the best picture that came out that year. Now, technically, yes, because it has the award, but when we're looking at these scores here, we are looking at aggregate scores of a variety of different people. And would it be in the People's Choice Awards for the tiebreaker for that particular 3 that you're talking about? Now, we know that there are going to be changes happening in the next couple of rankings that we pulled across the internet. And internet rankings, they're here nor there, but they are something that we can at least put a metric to. But
this is not scientific polling by any stretch.
I mean, I know this is a completely different thing, but if Londo's scene of him looking through the glass, during the bombardment of Narn with the mass drivers from Long Twilight Struggle was in any other episode that's on your list, I would probably use that as the tiebreaker. Because for me, that's one of the greatest scenes filmed ever.
Yeah. It's really hard to argue that. Yeah. So, I mean, really, I'm taking the Switzerland approach. I think they're all winners. They're all super good. Any one of these, you're not going to go wrong with them. They're all super freaking strong. And as I was perusing through IMDb and making note of the ones that hit things like 9.2 or 9.1, also really strong episodes, some of my favorites. And so, when you're making room for only 5, even with a 3-way tie, that's not much. It's just a little slice.
Is War Without End Part 2 somewhat of a cheat or should I say this, does it stand alone as its own episode apart from War Without End Part 1?
I think that depends entirely on who you ask. And it depends on the list too, how people are putting it together, because somewhere in our lists here, War Without End is considered a unit. So 2-parters definitely mix things up a little. Sometimes they're counted as a solid, you have to have both or not at all. Other times, like in this case, they're separate. And in a way, I agree. It isn't fair because Part 2 gets the advantage of the payoff that's set up in Part 1.
Exactly. And there's a lot going on in Part 1 to set that up. I mean,
that doesn't make it lesser.
Sinclair, he's revealed in Part 1 on Minbar. So
right. Yeah. Like I think lean on the side of you can't really have one without the other. They are a unit. They are meant to be together.
I think so too. And I think that, if people were doing this rank, I would forgive them for putting War Without End as one unit. Right?
Yeah. And as mentioned in the comments by BC, War Without End also pays off Babylon Squared and A Voice in the Wilderness, parts 1 and 2. It's tying together so many questions that were brought up and had kind of accelerated throughout the first 3 seasons. That's why the payoff is so good.
And somebody said this to Joe. Somebody said that, do you always write with the idea of having certain payoffs in mind from details that you put in earlier? Something to that effect in Twitter. And he said that that's how I always write. I'm like, yeah.
Doesn't that sound like Kosh to you?
In a way, yeah.
I always write this.
Yeah, his foreshadowing has always been there, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. And especially with Babylon 5, man, you can't put together a story like this without arranging the pieces. It's just too complex.
The Rotten Tomatoes list is interesting to me that you brought that up or put this in our notes. So,
yeah, well, I went to Rotten Tomatoes hoping for individual episode breakdowns. Turns out, not really such a thing. There's not enough ratings to conclusively score each episode. So they do have season by season breakdowns. And this gets kind of interesting. So do you want me to read this?
Yes, please.
Okay. Season 1, the audience scores a 91% overall with 66 audience ratings. It gets a 67 on the tomato meter from 9 critics total. Weak.
Yeah.
Season 2 rated 97% by the audience with 58 ratings, 1 critic rating, nothing on the tomato meter. Therefore, season 3 gets 98%. So does season 4. And then season 5 gets an 81%.
You know what, though? I find these percentages interesting because they ramp up exactly where they need to. They level off exactly where they need to. And they kind of like decrescendo exactly where they need to based on the story. So yes, season 1, I don't disagree that it's not higher rated. I think it's exactly where it needs to be because it is setting the foundation for the story. Season 2, even more so, which is why it's ticking up just a little bit more percentage wise. Season 3 and 4, I would probably maybe throw season 3 at a 99, maybe season 4 at a 98, just because season 3 I think has overall per episode stronger episodes than season 4, but it's rising, then decrescendoing hard in season 5 because season 5 is the denouement of the 5-year arc. So you're not getting the epic climaxes and conclusions that you have already seen in season 4. True.
I have a hard time really ranking seasons 3 and 4. Like, is one better than the other? Like, in my mind, they both have such equally strong points that I don't know. I kind of agree with the solid 98% on both of them. You know what really gets me is the audience seems to like season 1 quite a bit. I mean, it definitely is a little bit of a drop from seasons 2 through 4, but the critics really come down hard on season 1. And I wish we had more critic ratings of seasons 2 through 5 just to see, the ramp up and then the fall down with season 5. How much of a disparity would there be from the audience as a whole? Because if people are on Rotten Tomatoes are rating, chances are it's because they either love it or they hate it.
Right.
Critics are supposed to be a little more objective.
Supposed to be.
I'm just curious how that would break down.
I wanted to say hi to Mountains of Elysium and Anne-Marie, who joined us also. We didn't get a chance to see you at the very beginning, so thanks for joining us.
Good to see you.
But I don't think there's a lot of data for us to pull from here, really. So I think we should maybe get into
Let's move on.
The online rankings. Now, you and I both pretty much pulled from the same handful of online ratings because I was looking for the ratings that had like the most recent timestamp to them, and a majority of them that we picked were within the 2021 range, which is why I think that people have taken a look at at Babylon 5 either prior to or just right after the HBO remastering. So
yeah,
I think that's where we're coming from here.
Yes, certainly the heightened press from being on HBO Max, that certainly helped, increase relevancy results, if nothing else.
So Anne-Marie says she's 11 episodes away from the end of her first watch.
Oh, your first watch. Oh, exciting.
So we'll try and stay a little spoiler-free here.
Let's not discuss the finale.
Yeah, we'll discuss the hard numbers, but not necessarily finale, especially not Sleeping in Light.
Everybody be quiet. Yeah. But cool. Oh, that's so exciting. And thank you for joining us. Glad you found us. Okay. Well, shall we go through the ranker list?
Let's do it.
Okay. Number 5, this is interesting, is Babylon Squared. Number 4, War Without End, Part 2.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah. Number 3 is The Coming of Shadows. You've seen that before. Number 2. Yes. Number 2 is Severed Dreams. Number 2. Any guesses as to number 1?
I know my guess.
Well, yeah, you can look at the notes. You can cheat. I'm actually trying to give a little opening for our listeners to chime in and see what they think.
Okay.
Yeah, let's give them a moment. Let's drink some Brevari. I'm just curious, if you can't beat Sever Dreams, what's it going to be? And maybe this is a subjective thing.
Earl, you're absolutely right. I would have voted for that. I would have voted for Grave 17 is Missing. I also would have voted for TKO. Right?
And Secrets of the Soul.
Right. And Infection. Those are some of my top favorites.
Infection definitely makes my top 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a favorite. Okay. People are going for Sleeping in Light. You are wrong. It is Zahadum. Now, before I went into this research, I didn't realize just how highly ranked Zahadum was.
I was surprised.
Yeah,
To be
like
honest
I
with you.
figured I would probably see it here and there, but so close to the top and so consistently, that was a surprise. Now, don't get me wrong, I love me some Zahadum.
Oh yeah,
Because as
yeah,
a cliffhanger, it doesn't get much more just jaw-dropping than that.
right.
But I didn't expect it to make the rankings the way it did. So that was an interesting observation.
It was, and you know what? I think it's just because it has like so much like emotional components to it. I mean, you have what happened to Sheridan, what happened to Garibaldi. The shadows just disappeared because, and that happens too many times in Babylon 5 for us to be able to just say like what, why, how, right? Because in Sever Dreams, which is coming up short against Zahadum in this list, in Sever Dreams, the Minbari like show up and kind of like the Earth Alliance just retreats. So you have all of these, attacks at the station with something monumental that happens, and then like the attacking force retreats. You had that with the, the Battle of the Line. So Joe can only we only have so many heartstrings that you can pull, Joe, right? And our stomachs are, they're doing somersaults at the end of this episode.
I'm so glad you described it in that way, because that really was what was happening to me the first time I watched Zahadum. Now, I did not watch it during its original run. I am so grateful I didn't have to wait 3 months to see how this was going to conclude, because my jaw was on the floor. My stomach was just churning of how are they going to get out of this?
That episode left a hole in my mind.
Right. I think it burned a hole in mine too. Yeah, it was just, holy crap. John Sheridan, I really thought he was dead.
Well, considering that they're not afraid to write off main characters, that's a testament to the strength of Babylon 5, that the story is most important and not necessarily one individual character. By this time, we lost Talia, we lost Sinclair. Right.
So it's not like we'd already changed hands at the top of the command ranks. Am I right?
Right. So
yeah,
that
so
was,
it seemed possible.
That was possible. And like BC said, Zahadum is the best of both worlds of Babylon 5. And we know that the reason why they chose to go one way with Patrick Stewart is because they weren't sure if they were going to sign on Patrick Stewart after season 3 of the Next Generation. The ratings weren't there.
Gosh. Did you watch Best of Both Worlds when it aired live?
Hell yes, I did.
Okay, what was your reaction?
I was like speechless. But I wasn't nearly like the emotional wreck of every possible permutation of emotional wreck that I was at the end of Zahadum. Right?
Yeah. I mean, okay, when Best of Both Worlds aired, I was just a kid, and I wasn't necessarily watching Star Trek on the regular at that point, but I remember my dad's reaction, who was watching loyally at that point, and he was throwing things at the TV and just, what you do, just throwing a fit. And I have never seen my dad so angry or whatever that was at a TV program before. Like, it just killed him. Him. But me watching Babylon 5, that was my Best of Both Worlds moment for sure. Just, oh no, you didn't.
Yeah.
No freaking way. I was just beside myself.
Yeah, the last thing's jump now. Like, what?
And then he did.
Yeah, and just boom, right into the chasm he goes. Oh my
God, son of a bitch. He actually did it. What is going on?
Right.
I really didn't think, though, that he could survive a nuclear blast. I mean, I just thought he's going to save himself from the worst of it, but he's going to, trudge down to his death. At least he's not getting as nuked.
Unbelievable.
So, the part where Delenn sees his message and she just collapses to the ground. Man, I felt my knees go weak.
That's what he's, and he's, he said what he couldn't say in person. He's like, I just wanted to tell you, I love you, Delenn.
How dare you, you son of a... Now you're dead? Yeah. Unrequited love.
Well, not just him. I mean, not just Sheridan, but this is Joe's fault, too. Joe, ruined us for an entire summer, So.
He did. I mean, he's so good at subverting expectations, playing with emotions. Masterful writing.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to Episode Ninja for our next ranking, top 5. Okay. I did not know Episode Ninja was a thing, but it's a place to rank stuff. That's what you do there.
Mhm.
Now, the number 5 selection is one of my favorites because this is one that we haven't heard yet, and it's Into the Fire.
Well, Into the Fire is a very good episode. A very good episode.
That ends the Shadow and Vorlon War.
Right.
So, I mean, you would think objectively, oh, this might make more lists just because it's such a important moment. It's concluding a massive storyline, but there's also that whole aspect that a lot of people were disappointed by the end of this war, which you and I, Norm, have talked ad nauseum. We think that is unfounded just because it wasn't a bunch of pew pew action.
Also, it wasn't a bunch of prophets wishing ships away. Oh, did I say that?
Oh,
I did. Oh,
you went there.
I said
Send your hate mail too.
Hey, I said it publicly on Mission Log. I'm not about to apologize for that statement.
You probably got the hate mail already. So what's the difference, huh? Okay. Number 4 is shadow dancing.
That surprised me, to be honest with you.
Really? Yeah. Do you not like that episode?
No, it's just in terms of kind of like where I was like, this is top 10 for sure. Top 5, you got to be, I think, a little bit more disconcerting.
I mean, I like shadow dancing. I don't know if it's a top 5.
Sorry, Anne Marie.
Oh, you shut your mouth.
Yeah, no. Hey, oh.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah, see, top 10 is an easier format to get around. Top 5?
5 is tough because you got to make some just really difficult cuts.
I mean, yeah, you're splitting the finest of hairs, and this is all subjective, obviously. But
of course,
but it's this kind of like, what do you cut out for shadow dancing to put into this top 5?
Right? Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's where the subjectivity comes in, is what necessarily are you looking for? What matters to you? There's nothing but gold really to choose from. So it's just, well, which bar?
Exactly. I love how you put that. Which bar of gold pressed latinum do you take off the Dabo table?
Here we go, crossing the streams again.
Yeah.
But Earl agrees. He loves shadow dancing. And you know what? Yeah, it didn't surprise me to see that listed there. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
So it's about time we see this show up.
I also like it because it's different. It's a different choice.
Yeah.
And it's I'm saying it's not controversial. It's just different.
Also, as BC mentioned, it's the title of a BG song.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and now I've got that song in my head, and I'm just going to dance off to the end of the show with it. I'm going to warn you now.
Buck Rogers disco style. Yeah.
Okay, number 3. Now we're getting to some more typical stuff. It's War Without End, Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, Sever Dreams. Mm-hmm. And number 1, again, Zahadum.
For some reason, like the last, these 3, I mean, as much as I understand, their ranking system, I almost felt like they are not cheating, but they got a little lazy because they brought in 4 and 5 were really interesting picks. And I wanted to go deeper into where your polling went and why you chose those 2, because those 2, those 2 are off the beaten path of that,
they really are.
Of that list. So,
I think that's something we're showing right now.
So in their top 5, since they had Into the Fire and Shadow Dancing, I was hoping that somewhere along the line, they would have made a defense for Coming of Shadows. They wouldn't have made a defense for Sleeping in Light in their top 5, since they were a little unorthodox with their 4 and 5.
Sure. But we didn't get that. So fine. Okay. And that kind of concludes the voting rankings where people submit their votes. And then we do have a couple of lists just written by, authors of bigger, I guess, blogs that people probably know. Do you want to go through Screen Rant?
Absolutely. So I liked Screen Rant's ranking list because there were a couple in there that I like as personal favorites, but they were a little bit more different in terms of their ranking. So number 5 for Screen Rant is Chrysalis. And I think that this is a fabulous pick for number 5.
I totally agree. I was expecting more Chrysalis on these lists because of any episode in season 1. This is probably my pick.
As much as, as John Sheridan's, his cliffhanger ending is epic at the end of season 3, what is happening to Delenn at the end of that is just as important in season 1.
100%.
Right? I mean, she's going through that transformation. The entire season, you see her building the technology for the Chrysalis. And then she finally puts the triluminary at the end, and then things kick off. You also have Garibaldi being shot.
Right.
Sinclair and
Catherine Sakai.
Catherine Sakai, not knowing where their future is going. Though
Right.
he says at the end, everything has changed.
Right. Nothing is the same anymore.
Nothing is the same anymore. Right.
Yeah. And possibly they're getting married. They're talking about it. They asked, or Catherine asked Ivanova to be maid of honor.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, a lot happened. The assassination of President Santiago. I mean, that at first feels really chaotic. Only does it pale in comparison to what comes later.
Well, I mean, and also in Chrysalis's defense, like, I don't remember a season 1 finale being as cliffhangery in a lot of series that I've watched. Most season 1 season finales are kind of like a tidy wrap up to the season because they don't know if they're going to go into a season 2. So they play it a little safe, and you can continue the story, but if you don't, it wraps up nicely. But Chrysalis leaves you hanging so badly with especially 2 major characters, with Delenn and Garibaldi.
Totally. I mean, it really does blow up the chaos that's been building for a good portion of the season.
Right. And we didn't know what happened to Michael O'Hare afterwards. So all of a sudden, when the summer, was over and then season 2 picked up, you see the Agamemnon and you see orders for Sheridan to go to Babylon 5. You're like, what happened?
Oh, totally.
Right? You're
floored. And also, who is this other guy?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, dude, Tron's on the show, but I love Tron.
Cool, but the other guy, I was just starting to get to know him and like him, but what?
Yeah, and that's another thing about Chrysalis is that, you still care. You care so much about Sinclair by the end of that season that it wants to drive you into season 2 and see like what happens between those two. Do they get hitched? Do they not? Does she leave the station? Do they not? So
I genuinely miss Sinclair by season 2. I mean, I was excited to see Bruce Boxleitner and a smiley, happy-go-lucky Sheridan. I mean, I liked the character pretty quickly, but I thought, well, is Sinclair coming back eventually? Like, how dare you? I was just starting to really like this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, no other show had really done this. And I thought, okay, well, behind the scenes, there must be some sort of contract dispute because that's how real life would force the hand of a show to do something like this. It's never a thing of, like, oh, the character just is gone now. Like today that would happen. But we had no idea what was really going on at the time.
And the truth when it was and the truth when it was revealed about Michael O'Hare, we know what happened after he left and why he left. It's a very tragic story, and we have discussed that on the air before.
We have. And Anne-Marie, if you don't know that story, go on YouTube and look that up. There's a great Phoenix Comic-Con panel with Joe Straczynski talking about that for the first time. It's must watch.
It's must watch. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so number 4 on Screen Rant is Sleeping in Light.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Good stuff.
I have no problem with that. Number 3, The Long Twilight Struggle. I'm glad it made the list.
Yep.
I'm glad it made the list.
Deserving.
Or a list. And number 2 is War Without End Part 2.
Okay. I mean, I'm not surprised. A lot of payoff in War Without End too.
Right. There's a lot of payoff. There's a lot of, say, seasons 1 through 3 really were supposed to be Sinclair's seasons.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
we forget that.
and now knowing what we know about Michael O'Hare, him being able to come back and work to complete the Sinclair storyline to Valen, that's monumental. And, we're all thankful that he did that.
Yes, I completely agree. The first time I watched the show after learning the truth about Michael O'Hare, watching War Without End, especially part 2, where he says, I am called Valen, I just thought, how perfect of a way to give this guy a send-off. Yeah. He got to wrap it up. He got to finish what he started. How good.
Yeah, it was brilliant. And much to Joe's credit, much to Michael O'Hare's credit, it was the best way to wrap that up. And that's why I understand why War Without End Part 2 has made it to every list so far.
It's pretty interesting.
It makes, it's Valen, right? It's
Valen.
Yeah, it ties up and it sets kind of like that whole temporal paradox thing in motion.
It's also one of the very few, very few instances of time travel on Babylon 5.
Right.
And you get to Babylon Squared and all of that, but it's not like they went to that well very often, unlike other deep space franchises.
Yeah, exactly. And it pays off. Like Joe doesn't,
yes.
This is an illustration of how Joe just doesn't use narrative cues or narrative tropes for the sake of. There's a reason. And there's always a reason for what he does in his writing.
Yeah, and there's this whole story just ready to blow up. And it's pretty amazing.
Speaking of blowing up, number 1.
Blowing up.
Sever Dreams.
Okay. It hits number 1. Now, I was expecting a lot more number 1s.
Yeah, but interesting enough, though, on this list is not Zahadum at all.
No.
I found that interesting. Well, I mean, when you take a look at these particular 5 episodes, Sever Dreams, I think, and you know, I'm sure that fans out there, especially watching and maybe watching later, will disagree with me. But one of the things about Sever Dreams that I don't really think makes it a number 1 episode for me is that a lot does happen in Sever Dreams for sure. But I think that it became the quote unquote city on the edge of forever episode in Star Trek fandom. I think it became more famous for the momentum of the fans' support of this episode rather than the quality of the episode itself. And I'm not saying it's a bad episode. It's definitely in the top 5, if not the top 3 for the story. But I think that, I mean, I love City on the Edge of Forever, but I don't think it is by far and away the best original series episode. But it has the momentum of being the quote unquote greatest episode of the original series of all time and one of the greatest episodes of Star Trek of all time. But I don't agree with that. But that's what online momentum has perpetuated it to be in the rankings, right?
Yeah. Well, and the more people talk online, there's more of that consensus of, oh yeah, I agree. And, you know, there kind of becomes this collective bandwagon,
right?
Getting around that. I would say City on the Edge of Forever is not the best Star Trek episode of the original series, but it is one of the very best sci-fi episodes of television I have watched.
Science fiction, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So you have to kind of look at it at these lists from how did it further the story, right? And for me, you know, War Without End obviously furthers the story. What I like about Long Twilight Struggle is that this is where Londo basically he passes the point of no return.
It's true.
You know, where say in where Jakar takes the dust, that's where he passes the point of no return. Right? He changes there, and he changes for the better. Where here Londo changes for the worst. He knows that he can't support the mass drivers against Narn. He knows that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do anything to stop it. So he has to either go with Lord Rifa, or cover his tracks to try and find a way to dig himself out of this hole. But he knows he can't. But he's going to try, and it just gets worse.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so true. Yeah. It's almost like watching him dig his own grave.
Exactly. Every single shovelful of dirt that he throws over his shoulder, that pool just gets, like that little bitty pool of water just gets taller and taller and taller. And the hole gets deeper and deeper and deeper to the point where he's just sinking in his own machinations.
Yeah. He's got to drown.
Oh, and Anne-Marie Jakar is my favorite character of all time.
Yeah. Look at that freaking thing.
He's my spirit animal.
He's a good one to have.
All right, so we got one more list before we jump into our lists. So,
yes,
you want to go for it?
Sure, why not? This one comes from Star Loggers, and they did a top 20 Babylon at 5 episodes, and I just listed the top 5. So at number 5 we have Sleeping in Light, and number 4, And the Sky Full of Stars.
I really like In the Sky Full of Stars. Very good episode.
It is very good. Yes. Yeah. I don't know if it makes my top 5, but I do like it a lot. Number 3, here we go. Finally uniting War Without End, parts 1 and 2. They said this is a double deal or no deal. I agree.
I agree.
As we discussed. Number 2, The Coming of Shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like
Solid
that.
choice.
I like that a lot.
Solid pick. Solid ranking.
Yeah. And then at number 1, Severed Dreams.
So they chose And Sky Full of Stars over, say, Zahadum or The Long Twilight Struggle or Chrysalis, say. What is it about And Sky Full of Stars do you think makes it on this list? Where do you think that they're coming from with that? Now, there's a lot going on there because it has to do with, first of all, it has to do with the abduction of Sinclair. That's one. But secondly, it also has to do with a lot of the history of the Battle of the Line, of which Garibaldi is trying to figure out what happened to Sinclair, as Sinclair asked. So you're seeing a lot of what happened to him, what happened to Mitchell, how he was taken by the Minbari. All of that stuff was kind of like co-opted into in the beginning, before the true beginning of season 5. So there's a lot going on there story-wise, especially when it comes to Sinclair.
Yeah, totally. I have a feeling whoever compiled this list, and I'm taking a quick look. I don't know if there's an author. Jose Soto? Okay, that might be the author. This person, I think, is a Sinclair fan and wanted to give Sinclair some due. And
Sure.
I'm totally cool with that, because it does, for as much as it doesn't explain about what happened to Sinclair, you're at least starting to get some pieces. And therefore, it really is quite a bit of information that we get in season 1. Like, I feel like it's enough to string us along. Like, feel like we got some answers without getting all the answers, and then keep building as things go.
And if you took it in the context of where the series was going, that really sets the stage for what would have happened in season 2 as Garibaldi's investigation would have continued to uncover more of Sinclair's, the hole in his mind, the loss of time, that 24-hour loss of time at the end of the Battle of the Line. We probably would have seen a little bit more interaction going on with, say, more characters like Ari Ben Zion, Colonel Ari Ben Zion, who was upset that a mere commander was picked for the Babylon 5 station command post.
Yes. Yeah, that was a good point too. Yeah, there was some pushback on that. Hey, what the heck?
Right. And then we probably would have seen a little bit more with, say, Delenn and Sinclair, because Delenn was basically keeping an eye on him, making sure that nothing happens to him. One, so that the mind wipe wouldn't loosen on him as it was because of Sky Full of Stars. And 2, because she knows that he's going to be significant in the coming war.
Yes, which also puts into play questioning her motives, because at that point, we don't understand really what Delenn, what does she want? What is she really on Babylon 5 to do? Like, does she have some sort of ulterior motive that we don't know yet? I mean, it feels like you're kind of setting up for that sort of thing, even though we know the truth.
Right. And would we have seen that silver foil diamond appear on her head once again?
Right? Yeah. Yeah, that really could have blown her cover.
Right.
Quite a bit. Yeah. So that's pretty much what we found as far as rankings go. I mean, there's plenty of blog posts more out there that are somewhat dated, but now we want to know about you.
Yeah. So either you can share your rankings here, share them on Discord. We can talk about them there.
Yeah. If you don't have a list yet, by all means, put them on Discord. Before we close up the show, I'll give you a link to the to our Discord server, and that way you can join in.
All right. So we have just enough time to hit our personal lists.
Yes. Lists, plural. I'm glad you put it that way.
Ladies first.
Okay. All right. So I could have several lists. Let me start off with that. But I narrowed it down to 2 just for the sake of everyone's sanity, including my own.
Before you do this, is one of your lists going to make me do the 18+ rating?
I'll try to be kind. I haven't had that much Bravari.
All right.
Okay, so my quote unquote like objective list in terms of things like impact on the series, how it heightens my emotional state at the time, important story turning points. That's some of the criteria that I kind of try to determine as quote unquote objective. And somewhat disappointingly, a lot of it falls in line with a lot of the other lists that we have here. So here we go. Number 5, Sleeping in Light, because emotional reasons. Number 4, Zaha Doom, because the cliffhanger turns my stomach. 3, Endgame. Okay, if you were disappointed by the end of the Shadow War, here you go.
Endgame is brutally good. Brutally good.
So good. I love it. I love We Have Come Home. Mm-hmm. Number 2, And the Rock Cried Out, No Hiding Place. Now, I was disappointed that this did not make more top 5s. It makes top 10s all over the place, but guys, in my view, And the Rock Cried Out, No Hiding Place is one of the most perfectly orchestrated episodes of Babylon 5. In terms of how solid it is, in terms of levels of action, payoff, heightened emotion, it's got it all.
You know how I feel about it.
Make the list. Just how high did my voice go there?
It made your list, and that's all it counts.
It sure did. It did. It makes all of my lists. I mean, it's just great. It's got a little bit of humor. It's got action. It's got romance. Because that's when Sheridan and Delenn kiss. I mean, what more do you want, people? My goodness. Oh, and the countdown at the very end.
It's got gospel.
It's got gospel music while somebody's getting killed. Come on. That's good stuff. Yeah. Okay. And number 1, Sever Dreams. I mean, I think it makes the top of all of these lists for a reason.
Right.
And to your point about, is it the very best of Babylon 5? I think it is. I don't care if it's the city on the edge of forever. I think it's heightened for a reason.
It's definitely one of the greatest episodes of Babylon 5 for sure.
Yes.
Definitely.
Now, let's bring that into a caveat, because this leads to my other list. This is the F you, I do what I want list, where I'm going to cheat and I don't care. Okay?
All right.
And so I kind of, this list is also subject to change at any given notice, like no prior notice, and would be, I don't know, just ask me at a different time of day, different week. It might be different, but this is what I came up with this morning. Okay, so number 5, we have Comes the Inquisitor. Terry Lynn, I know that'll make you happy.
Solid choice.
Solid.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about like kind of like emotional suspense and really getting to the heart of a person's character and stripping them down.
This is my cause, life. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that did things to me first time watching it.
Yeah.
Just really, wow, took me on another level. So it had to make my list. Number 4, because I want comedic relief, Sick Transit Veer.
Also known as Abrahamo Lincoln.
And there are 6.
I love it.
I put it in for the whole conversation about 6 and just how uncomfortable Ivanova is about talking anything sex. And Veer. Veer is my sleeper favorite. He doesn't get nearly enough time. I just appreciate the hell out of Veer. He's a good man.
Yeah.
So I had to get a Veer episode. That's the one. Number 3 is A View from the Gallery.
Yay!
Come on, man. Mac and Bo. My buddies. I love them so much. I love this episode. I love how it's such a different but necessary take on the happenings in Babylon 5. Is it a perfect story? No, but I'm willing to forgive it. So there. Again, it's my list. It's my FU list. Don't at me.
I feel you.
Okay. Number 2 is And the Rock Cried Out No Hiding Place, because of all the reasons that I've already listed. And number 1 is the ultimate FU, because I'm going to cheat and I don't care, because this is how I watch these episodes. It is Messages from Earth, Point of No Return, and Severed Dreams as a trilogy marathon. You cannot have one without the other 2. Thank you very much.
That is like some of the most solid hours of TV you could ever watch in the history of ever.
Yeah. Oh man, I love Messages from Earth. Like first time watching the show, I kind of realized that was, I mean, I was already enjoying the show. Don't get me wrong, but Messages from Earth, for whatever reason, made me realize that something really big was brewing.
Yeah.
And of course, that was right.
Yeah.
And it only escalates in Point of No Return. And then Severed Dreams is that payoff.
Yeah, for sure. So good.
So
brilliant list, Char. I love them. And you know what I love about your lists is that these lists, when you hear, first of all, when you hear your rationale and reasoning behind your choices, this is coming from a fan who's looking deeper inside the episodes for what one matters to you. And that's the most important thing when it comes to watching any kind of entertainment. But also you're seeing it from the standpoint of how does it service the story. I think that in some of the ranker lists that are online, they'll take a look at like the aggregate of like the top 10 or top 15 and see, okay, they'll watch those and see like in those top 15, what are the best, right? Because they're not really going outside of the conventional box, as you can see by the commonality with the lists.
Sure.
But when you're looking at yours, I mean, there are some commonalities because the cream does rise to the top in Babylon 5 pretty quickly. But when it comes to looking at, say, like the Sky Full of Stars in Starlogger's list, it's like, yeah, someone did their homework here.
Exactly.
Someone did their homework here. You know?
And yes, of course, it's more subjective that way, but that's great because each of these episodes is going to have a slightly different meaning for each of us.
Yeah.
And that's the fun of doing these kind of lists. As Terry Lynn said, yes, this last list was my emotive list. Absolutely. It fills a lot of my emotional needs.
But that's what we watch TV for, right?
100%. Yeah. To kind of escape maybe the just the trauma of our day, to be entertained, to think about something else for a while, and to enjoy ourselves, get lost in some narrative.
So that's where like the Venn diagram of perfection in Babylon 5 really pays off when you're looking at these lists. Is when the narrative and the emotional need to watch these episodes, when they cross over, then you get the best, like your top list, right?
Right. Yeah, and these may not all be objective best, but to me, for varying reasons, and again, subject to change without prior notice, because that it's kind of a constantly evolving thing. It just depends. Well, how am I feeling today? What am I in the mood for? If I were to come up with a marathon list, it would probably change with any given day.
That might be a next
depending
episode.
On what's going on. Oh,
a marathon list.
Don't you dare let me create marathon lists. Oh, we will not be here for any less than 5 hours.
I dare. I double dog dare you.
You don't know what you're getting into, mister. Right. Now, how about you? How about your list?
Okay, so when you looked at my list, I'm going to go with what I'm
turning on a fan.
Char's getting worked up, y'all.
Yeah, I am. I'm getting emotional, man. No, it's just getting very hot in this room. You guys are getting dumped on with snow out there in the Rockies, and here I am just melting. Anyway.
So I wrote my 5 with a couple caveats because I thought that these were worth noting. So I'm going to go down. I have my 2 alternate picks, and I'll do those first, and then I'll count down my list.
Alternates. I like it.
Yeah. So these are the ones that I think that hit that Venn diagram of what I think is necessary for the story, because it does come up several times in terms of issues for the storyline to resolve, but also something I feel means to me personally. Number 7, I have my 2 caveats are 7 and 6. Number 7 is Passing Through Gethsemane.
Ooh, okay.
First of all, because Brad Dourif's performance as Brother Edward is phenomenal. Everyone should watch that.
Fantastic.
And I think that the bigger topic that has been discussed, say like in season 1's Quality of Mercy, and then later on, is the aspect of the mind wipe and what does it do to people, and can you forgive somebody who inhabits the physical persona of someone who is a criminal, someone who has wronged people.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many good moral questions brought up in this episode.
Right. And at the end, remember when Brother Theo says, "What were you talking about, Captain? About forgiveness?"
Yeah. I mean, just shoving it right back in his face.
So you'll see a lot of my picks in my list have to do with this type of like emotional catharsis. And also, I love that Babylon 5 is one of the few shows, at least at that time, that actually focused on, at time to time, focused on kind of like the worker situation in the future. So number 6, and one of my favorite episodes is By Any Means Necessary. That's from season 1, because that was a dock worker strike. That was a real human dock worker strike in the future.
Yeah.
That, like, how does that, like, who writes that?
Yeah. Very good story, just in terms of storytelling objectively, but also so very real.
Yeah.
To know that, well, unfortunately, that people are still fighting for good jobs and benefits and what have you in the future, but these are relatable problems.
Exactly. And I love that Sinclair is like, he's just being torn apart in so many different directions, and he has to negotiate the entire time. So it really showed you how as the governor, as the acting governor of Babylon 5 in the SETI Alpha 3 system, how he needed to be a politician, and a soldier at the same time. I thought that was fabulous.
What's also great about that episode is just how you do get everybody's point of view, where like what they're kind of trying to push or where they're coming from. And really, at the heart of it, you can't help but pour your heart out for Sinclair, who's just trying his hardest to make everybody happy.
Now,
which was not something I wasn't expecting that at first. Were you?
I love the story so much that I'll give a pass on how like over the top Orin Zento was, but that's another story.
Well, yeah. Anyway, please continue.
All right. So top 5, from 5 to 1, Sleeping in Light, number 5. And all I have to say is the greatest series finale ever created.
Yep. And we'll leave it there.
Ever created. Number 4, A View from the Gallery.
Yo, Mac and Bo, more love.
And
we
why?
here at the Zócalo love Mac and Bo. And Summer, I'm so sad that you weren't able to find either of the actors, because I would love to have heard them on your podcast.
I love when they bring in characters that are there on the station, and not necessarily in the main character or heroic capacity. They just are. And
yeah,
it
they've
sheds a
got
light
day-to-day
on,
lives
right. It
in
sheds
the
a
midst
light
of all
on
the
what's
action.
going on of all the
Yeah.
behind the scenes and stuff. So I
Yeah,
love that.
it's so freaking good. Yeah, I
And they're
wish we would have
real,
gotten more.
right? They're
And
real.
they're real.
And,
They are.
and never once did I want a hard salami sandwich so badly than watching that episode. Right?
Better than Spoo.
At 10 credits an ounce, if you can believe that. Number 3, intersections in real time.
Yeah, I know this is a very high personal favorite of yours.
Yes.
And you've explained many times, but do it one more time if you would. We have new viewers.
The reason why I think intersections in real time is one of the best episodes in Babylon 5 is because, and Joe just actually tweeted this out. He said that it's an episode with 2 people, no special effects, no galactic space battles, no explosions, just 2 people trying to discover the truth. One's trying to discover whatever that means, because truth is a 3-sided sword. So, and it's also, I think, Bruce Boxleitner is, without a doubt, his finest performance, I think, in Babylon 5. Without a doubt.
Agree. Yeah.
And
it's so theatrical. I mean,
exactly.
It really gives those actors just every opportunity to shine because the set is so minimalist and there's nothing to get in their way.
And this is like peak Joe, because, when Ray Burke's Inquisitor says, do you really think that you can, challenge the status quo, to challenge history? When Sheridan says, every time I say no.
Yeah.
That is like, you can't break Sheridan, because the belief that justice will prevail, that the pursuit of justice will prevail, is something that I think that is very, very Joe. You'll see that in a lot of his writing. There's a very famous meme that's passed around the internet about Captain America, where you plant yourself like a tree to the people that say move, and he says no, you move. Right.
Right. And Joe, he's such a champion of the truth, and he instilled that in Sheridan with that belief of the truth will come out, because it always does.
So, and I can watch that till the cows come home. It is a masterclass in acting. Bruce and Ray are phenomenal, and also a great food episode, because the Inquisitor's pastrami sandwich with that hot mustard, just hot enough, but not with the seeds that get stuck in your teeth. Oh my God. Corned beef. So good. I want a sandwich. I'm a big fan of sandwiches. So anytime a sandwich makes an appearance in an episode, I'm down.
You're down. That's fantastic.
Number 2, and the Rock cried out, no hiding place.
Yes.
I have made my love about this episode known ever since we started doing the show. I think that it is one of the best paced episodes in Babylon 5. The kind of like the consolidation of Jakar's and Londo's scheme at the end to get their revenge on Rifa after Adira was poisoned by Rifa, and then after Jakar knew that it was Rifa's orders that bombed Narn with the mass drivers. It showed that they both were trying to seek something differently for their people, not what happened. And it started the reconciliation of sorts between them.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yes, because isn't this the first time we see them sort of trying to work together for their own causes, but nevertheless?
Yeah, it started the dialogue between the two of them that really ended when Londo came into power and removed Jakar from the council.
Yeah.
And that was their true legitimate break. And then this was kind of like their true legitimate healing process in a way.
Yeah, the start of it. Yeah, with a lot more to come. Yeah,
and then Rifa running for his life, scored by the gospel music, was just phenomenal.
Okay, I mean that's my absolute favorite part. If you would have told me before watching this that I would enjoy watching somebody get killed to gospel music, I would have just thought, how?
No,
well, here's how. Down here. I mean, it's just in some really weird way, it's fun.
Yeah.
But of course, the message of the song to the footage, I mean, masterful editing, by the way.
The tone and the texture of that scene is just sublime.
It is. Oh God, I love it so much.
Mountains of Elysium says, I don't want to miss this quote or comment. Intersections in real time helped me get out of depression and fight suicidal thoughts. I took every time I say no as a mantra. When I said no to dark thoughts, saying no became a victory. And if that's what you got out of it, that is amazing.
And that in itself is a victory. And awesome that you took that and used it. Bravo. And I'm glad you're here.
And of course, Summer knew what I was punctuating. Leave his head for identification purposes. The rest is yours.
The rest is yours. Da-da, da-da.
All right.
Yeah.
So here's my number one favorite episode of Babylon 5 of all time. Has never changed. Because I think that it is probably the most Star Trek episode of Babylon 5, or the most Babylon 5 of Star Trek episodes that I have ever watched. And it is Believers.
And if you've watched this show, you know all the reasons why.
Yeah. So Believers, for me, is probably one of the, and it was written by David Gerrold of Star Trek fame.
Yes. Speaking of which, if I could interject with one quick thing, BC has a fantastic list in our Discord of episodes, his top 5 B5 episodes not written by JMS.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Isn't that cool?
Like,
that was a great idea.
He, he was like of the writer's room kind of like production mentality at the very beginning. So David Gerrold did Believers. And what I love about Believers most is that you get to see what belief or what faith really means in what way and to whom. And there are so many different shades of gray that are going on here. One of my favorite scenes is just how brutally like capitalist that Londo is. Like, just how much goodwill can you afford? I'm like, oh my God, right?
Yeah, you dirty turd, man.
Right. Every single person in that episode that Sean's parents went to for help, they showed exactly what position their government would take and why. And it showed almost kind of like a blanket description of these are these races. Obviously, you don't talk to the Vorlon. Obviously, I just told you about Londo, but Shakar, if he goes, unless it's in his self-interest, to help his people. Not happening. Delenn is like, well, I kind of want to help you, but I kind of don't want to get involved. That's the Minbari.
That's totally the Minbari way, right? We saw that happen even with the Great Council not wanting to get involved with the Shadows until she intervened.
And even Sinclair, up to a point, he's like, I want to help you. When he sat down with Sean, and I said this before, he's the only person that asked Sean what he wanted. What do you want, Sean?
Yeah. Right? Everybody else didn't even think to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we have Franklin, who's so convinced that he's right because he could save this child.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's the end that kills me. It's the end that kills me because Franklin's on his high horse. He wants to get his steak dinner. He wants an apology from Sinclair. And then all of a sudden he reads about the ritual, at the end.
Right.
Because
he's dead. The kid's dead anyway.
It killed me because no matter what Franklin was going to do, he was going to lose.
Yeah. Which even he didn't realize. And it was just a sad ending all around. And it was one of those very first indications that this show was not Star Trek. Mm-mm. Because you just had to sit there and live with it, just like Franklin did. And it felt horrible.
Right.
No happy ending.
He was able to do medically exactly what he was trained to do, exactly what he promised to do. And he says, hey, you know what? If their belief system is valid, not to let him survive this entire affair, my belief system has to be just as valid in order to do the opposite. Whose belief system is right? And it goes all the way to, there was a movie with, I think it was with Alec Baldwin. And it's about him being a doctor. And one of the quotes in the preview was, when a mother or father or when someone is praying to God that their child would live after, whatever horrible accident that they were exposed to, who do you think they're praying to? They're praying to me. They're praying to the surgeon. They're praying to the doctor that will save their child. He goes, do you think that I have a God complex? I am God when it comes to this. And Franklin thought so too. Right.
And he's not completely wrong, because when we do entrust our bodies to the hands of a surgeon, we're saying,
save my life.
Right, exactly. And it didn't matter that, he could do it. And it still backfired. And it's still that didn't matter.
Yeah. And it's the juxtaposition of these two beliefs. It's doing what he did to save the life of his child fulfilled Franklin's belief in what he believed was right. But in the end, he doomed Sean to the beliefs and the rituals of his people.
Right.
And that kills me every time at the end. And then there's the glapid egg, and then I start crying. So
from Mount Placebo. Yes. Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, yeah. It's such a good episode. And I knew this would hit your number one. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt. See what I did there? Mm-hmm.
So there we are.
So, yeah. And we have on the Discord, we have Earl's top 5 list subject to change. Yeah. I mean, any time of day, and I might give you a different list too. Plus, if you are in the mood for some Bee Gees, BC has you hooked up. So there's good stuff happening on the Discord right now, and this is the point where I make the link. I have upped the little admit period to 7 days. So I hope this will work for a little while, because some people, these things are up here forever on YouTube. After a while, I mean, 1 day is not very much time to get on top of the Discord, where, at least until we can make a new link on a new episode of Zócalo, this ought to give us a little more space, a little more breathing room. Now, I'm hoping that trolls don't come in here and ruin everything. If that happens, I'm taking it right back down to 1 day. But so far, we've been lucky.
I think we're going to take, I'd like to take DC up on his idea here. DC says, will you guys do a least like episode list or a most despised character list? Now, I'm pretty sure I know one of yours, Char, but I don't want to get into it right. I'm so glad somebody brought this up, because the very same thought occurred to me coming up with the best list. It would be fun to look at the least liked rankings and compare that to our own lists. Is that something we want to do next week? I don't know. We'll talk.
Should we do that or marathons?
We will.
Maybe we take a vote.
Maybe we'll put that up on the Zócalo on Twitter. We'll put that to a vote. We'll put a poll up.
Okay.
And see what the peeps out there have to say.
Okay. We'll do that. Okay. Why don't we do that? See what wins out. And that's not to say we can't do both eventually at some point, but we can decide next week's fate. Right there.
Henry says, I can't wait because Asley can't stand TKO. I love TKO.
I love approximately half of TKO.
I love the half with Walker Smith.
And I love the half with Susan Ivanova, because that's a very emotional story for her. Now, I love Walker Smith, but I just don't like Rocky in space.
I love Rocky.
But see, there's the difference, is I'm not a big fan of the Rocky movies. I think they're silly, but we can discuss that another time. We got to wrap the show up. We're over an hour.
Yeah.
And okay, so you know the drill now, guys, is we're going to put the poll up on Twitter. I'm going to link to that as well, in case you're not following us there. And I think you have to have a Twitter account in order to vote. So hopefully you do. But let's get you set up here. Find a link. All of that. And juggling tabs. Here we go. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for that. Mountains of Elysium. Yeah, hit that like button, fellow nerds. 12 watching, only 3 likes. But you know what? Char and I have been at this for a while, and we continue to persevere. We've been at this for a little over 3 years now.
Coming across 3 years. Yeah.
Right.
This summer.
So if for all of our new listeners out there or new watchers, share this out. Share out the channel. Share out the page. Do what you need to do. Because Char and I do this from a purely passionate perspective. We love talking about Babylon 5. It's how we stay in touch. That's for sure. Right?
Yes. I mean, that's really the thing that has bonded the two of us together. We both love Star Trek, but we love Babylon 5 much more. And pretty much every time that we have gotten together in person pre-COVID, it's centered around a discussion of Babylon 5.
Go figure.
I know. Big surprise. But anyway, that is sort of what forged us starting this thing. And yeah, I mean, it's just a fun project. We enjoy doing it. We do it for funsies. We're not trying to make money. We do have a merch store, but we're talking about updating the merch. So we'll hold off on mentioning that any further until then. And yeah, just hit us up on the Twitter. You can follow me personally at the Profanity. Norm, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lounge Lizard, and I know some of you are doing that. So yeah, do the social media thing. Make sure that you like or you share, subscribe, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
right?
And thank you all for joining us. This was a lot of fun, and if you come up with lists, we want to hear them. Hit up that Discord, baby. Let's really generate some chat. We have good chats, but let's do more.
All right, folks. So until next time, be seeing you.
Take care, everybody.